wanna get high, man?
Let's stimulate your mind.
Get up, Chucky! What have we got here? A fucking comedian.
Rojan Kim?
Hello, and welcome to the Rojan Kim cast. It's me, Rojan Kim. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 203 this Thursday. It's Thursday for me, October 8th, 2020. I don't know why I'm doing that. I'm saying the date at the beginning. You know what? For posterity, right? For posterity, because this is a current events podcast. I can't help but talk about current events. You know, that's what I do. I just talk about what's going on. I talk about the room. When I do stand-up, that's what I end up doing. I just talk about what's going on. Sometimes I do, my material, my so important genius material that I crafted, painstakingly. But I've found nowadays what I like to do is just talk about what the hell is going on right here, because sometimes that's just bonkers enough. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand? I don't know why I'm not yelling. I actually sometimes I know my aunt is listening and she doesn't understand what I'm saying. So sometimes I guess I'm just reiterating that maybe I should slow down or use easier words or something. It's hard. I get into a thing, a flow, and then, I have no idea sometimes what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going, man. I'm just going, man. You know what I'm saying? It's just wind me up and go. I'm like one of those old, remember the Happy Meals that came with those cars from McDonald's, the little McDonald's characters inside the cars, and you pulled the car back and it was, there's like a tension thing, like a rubber band or something, and you let it go and it goes zzz, and then all the cars did different little moves. Like I remember the Early Bird or Birdie, she had one that like spun or something, and then like the Hamburglar did one that went straight. This went straight, and Grimace had one that went into like a figure eight type thing. These are old, useless memories of an old man. McDonald's Happy Meals kids from Happy Meals toys from the 80s. I don't even think they have Happy Meals anymore. I think that's like problematic or something. It's like, I don't know, not gender friendly or something. I don't know. Anyways, what's going on? Well, the debates, there were vice presidential debates. I didn't watch it, man. I don't know. I'm starting to tap out of all this stuff. I feel like Trump is kind of funny, so it's funny. It's worth watching him, and Biden's kind of funny too, because you're like, oh shit, what's he gonna do? I mean, both of them, you're basically wondering, like, what are they going to do? But I feel like Harris and Pence are both very controlled. You know what I mean? They're both tightly controlled politicians, the old school. This is what everybody wishes we could go back to, you know what I mean? This is the civility that we all want, except, of course, I guess there was some smack talk going on, right? Like the whole meme of the memes that came out, or Kamala Harris being like, I'm speaking with her evil grin, with her crazy grin. You ever see a woman grin like that, you're in trouble, man. She may have poisoned you. You may be going to spend the rest of your life in jail for a crime you didn't commit. You might be up for parole, but then denied because of your labor that's being used to fight forest fires or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of smile that is. You think she was smiling when she denied people parole? She was smiling and bumping Tupac and smoking a joint while she put people away for decades just for smoking joints themselves. I don't know. Is that wrong? I don't know. Joe Biden crafted the crime bill, which helped this it all goes hand in hand, right? Because crime bill led to like the 3 strikes, those 3 strikes you're out stuff, and especially drug offenses became part of that. And people are spending life in prison for drug offenses. And guess who was DA in one of the most liberal cities? San Francisco, right? The most liberal cities. I mean, basically, people think it's like a communist paradise, yet Kamala Harris was the DA, and something like 1,900 convictions. She convicted 1,900 people for marijuana. That's just for marijuana. God knows what else. But anyways, top cop. If you're into cops and you love the drug war, then, you love Harris. And Pence is no better. I mean, he's a fucking right-wing religious nut who calls his mom, or he calls his wife mother, and he's like, he's probably gay, most likely gay. Everybody's like, he's gay, possibly an X-Men villain. You know what I mean? Like, about Pence and how just to use in charge of the pandemic task force, so he's doing a great job there, right? Like, he's definitely not like a Cheney type vice president where he's pulling all the strings, you know what I'm saying? If anything, he's like a Dan Quayle type vice president, Joe Biden type president, vice president, actually. See, the whole point, it's not like Biden was controlling the strings behind Obama or anything. Biden was there to ease the people, a lot of people might have had misgivings about black president who was not tested, no experience. So they're like, all right, we got to get an insider in there. We can get Joe in there. Joe's fine. He could be number 2. He could play second fiddle to the first black president. He'll be fine, Well, anyways, he's up to bat for the number 1 spot. And that's where we are. Of course, there was the fly. The fly. Everybody was like, you hear about the fly? That's the biggest meme that came out of the fly was on Pence's head for 2 minutes, and everybody was like, fly. Wow, fly. Flies on politicians are actually a very common thing. You could just look up fly and just type in like Obama, and there's a fly on Obama's face. And you could type in fly Hillary, and there's a fly on Hillary's face. You could just type in fly. Is that flies land on you? Spend enough time on television, a fly will land on you. Okay, it's not fucking doesn't mean anything. That's how boring and ineffectual these debates were. Where that's the biggest takeaway was that a fly landed on Pence's head for 2 minutes, like he's a piece of shit. See, because flies land on shit and rotting corpses. That's him. He's a rotting gay corpse that flies land on. Ha 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 ha. There's a picture of a fly right on Obama's face, just smack dab in the middle of his face. But whatever, we can't. You shouldn't talk about that. That fly is good. That was a good fly. That was a good fly. Well, I think Obama actually killed that fly like he did that American citizen in Yemen that he killed. Right? By his hand, just like that American, whatever his name was, the guy, they were saying he was like, he did the propaganda for Al-Qaeda or something, but okay, no trial. That's just on your word. It's like, this is okay. And you just murder the guy. And the fly, too. No trial for the fly. If anything, this fly is a hero now because it's on Pence. But back then, it's fine for the fly to be murdered. We cheered as Obama murdered that fly with his bare hands. There's blood on Obama's hands. Fly blood. And we cheered and we cheered and we laughed. We didn't care. We don't care. We act like we care, but we don't. Come on. That's the one thing America's good at. We're still good at stuff. One is being overconfident. The other was not caring at all. It's an interesting paradox, right? Like, we're so confident, but we also just don't give a fuck. So, and isn't that what Trump is? Isn't that what our president? Isn't that what he embodies? He's our reflection. I think Trump is a reflection that we're like recoiling from. It's like if you're fucking drunk or on acid or whatever, and you go in the bathroom, and you're like, ah. But instead of like coming to terms with it, we're trying to kill it. Like, kill the reflection. Like smashing the mirror, and then we see more pieces of him everywhere. And we're like, trying to smash it into. It's like the more pieces I smash it into, the more of me I see. It's like that is not the way you're gonna beat. In fact, you shouldn't even think about beating him, Trump. You should think about Trump the way the end of the Matrix was, right? Because the end of the Matrix was just Neo letting Agent Smith just turn him into him, and then everything fell apart. You know what I mean? You just let Trump hang himself with his own rope. Stop fighting him. Just let him. But anyways, nobody is. So we're not talking about anything of substance, nothing about the extreme poverty that's going to hit this country because of the lockdowns, the 7 wars that's still going on, killing people wantonly, just murder machines going around shooting missiles at them from the sky. You know what I'm saying? In all these countries they can't do anything against us. They don't have a fucking army. They don't have armies like ours. They don't have drones. They're completely outclassed and outgunned, and we've been fighting them for 20 years, at least Afghanistan and Iraq, right? Like almost 20 years now, fighting these guys who have pretty conventional weapons, and we still haven't. There's no exit plan. Anytime there is an attempt to exit, it's immediately squashed by both parties, the left and the right, immediately squash any attempt to pull out of Afghanistan or Iraq, just Syria, anything, any of it, It's like, and then everything is phrased in the news as if it's like a big danger. It's like, that's not presidential, or how could we do that? How could we turn our backs? That's the line we use. How could we turn our backs on the people we're trying to help? It's like, are we helping? 20 years? There's like 40,000 deaths in Afghanistan last year. Multiply that over 20 years. Like, and we're helping? Okay. All right. Whatever. There's the whole thing of like, now what will happen with the next debates? I mean, they're going to try to take the goddamn debates away again, with the next, what are the next debates? They're supposed to be, they were going to like make them virtual. I think they suggest, but then the Trump side was like, no, not virtual. And then the Trump team was like, how about we postpone and have the last debate like right before the election? And the Biden team was like, nope, not doing that either. So there's a chance there's no debates. That's too bad, because I thought it would be pretty funny if Trump gave Biden COVID. That would be pretty hilarious. And then Biden died. And then Trump made it through and Biden died. And he'd just be like, see, I'm weak. Sleepy Joes, sleep forever. You know what I mean? Like, fucking, like, this whole thing is, like I said last podcast, it's the Schadenfreude, right? It's a boomerang. The motherfuckers are all these people. I'm actually watching, a lot of comics on Twitter who are now facing all this backlash from like cheering on the president's death and being like, I hope he dies, whatever. And then them backtracking and being like, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that or whatever, because I guess there still is a line, and that line is drawn by the Secret Service, and that you can't really wish death upon the president publicly, because they will investigate that. They'll come after you and say, hey, what's this about? You just saying you want to kill the president. You know what I mean? And really, if you think about it, it's like, if you go back to Bush, people wanted to kill Bush, right? People wanted to kill fucking Obama for sure. And now people want to kill Trump. So, I think there's probably a very sensitive kind of, especially on Twitter, because Trump lives on Twitter. You think they're not going to see that? You don't think he has Secret Service agents on Twitter? You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't think that, like, Trump's Twitter account doesn't have a Secret Service like attaché of Secret Service Twitter accounts protecting the Trump Twitter account, and they're willing to take a bullet, for the guy. They're willing to take a bullet for the guy. So anything could happen. The war. There's a war. There's meme war. The meme war is on. Meme war is going on strong. You could see that it's happening with the fly stuff and all this stuff that's happening. And there's gonna be more, man. There is gonna be more. There's supposed to be this bombshell, right? Or at least the Trump team's calling it a bombshell, which is supposed to be the smoking gun for proof that Hillary Clinton knowingly created the false Russiagate hoax narrative, and that Brennan, the CIA head, knew about it, and that he told Obama about it. And those are his handwritten notes, Brennan's handwritten notes, that state that. So the fact that they got wind of that from Russian intelligence. So Russian intelligence, our intelligence got wind from Russian intelligence that Hillary Clinton was planning to do a frame job on Donald Trump in order to distract from the whole pesky email server thing, which is really interesting because then James Comey also put out that letter. Remember that letter he put out? That was sort of like, a lot of people say it cost Hillary the election, because he was all like, yeah, it is kind of, it is shady what she did. You know what I mean? So all of that's very interesting, right? None of it will come to light because nobody really cares. Nobody cares about truth. That's what I said earlier, right? America, we don't care, right? Dude, Russiagate, nothing came to light of it. People are convinced it's real. I still argue with people all the time. They're like, there's evidence, and the Mueller and this. No, there's not. There isn't. Dude, look, I always fucking retweet Aaron J. Mate, and I like to come from the left. Jimmy Dore, also Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi. These are progressive guys, okay? They're not fucking Trumpers. They're not right-wing guys. They're fucking from the left. Okay? They're critical of the centrist Democratic establishment, and they're equally critical of the centrist Republicans. They're critical of everybody, okay? But they're coming from the progressive side. They liked Bernie, and they want socialism and all that stuff. And I don't necessarily agree, that maybe socialism is the answer, but I don't have to agree with journalists if they're telling me the truth. You know what I mean? If they're presenting, if it isn't some, emotional screed that they're presenting that's sort of like without much evidence and sort of hints at it, versus them examining the evidence, the testimony, all the stuff that's come out, and coming to the conclusion that, like, this is fucking bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. There's all this stuff continually coming out, and I think that's part of the October surprise strategy probably from the Trump side, is that they're going to start doling out all this information about how Russiagate was bullshit, and they're going to start hammering in on it. You know what I mean? And I think the Democrats know it, and they're getting scared because they're talking about invoking the 25th Amendment. Maybe the president's not fit, but the motherfucker is just firing off tweets and doing videos, and he's saying he's fine. He's like, I'm fine. He's like, I'm fine. I got sick, but I'm fine. And he's saying, don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid. And honestly, this is what's happening is public health has been politicized to the point where one side is saying, don't be afraid, and the other side, by default, saying, be very afraid. Okay? Be very afraid. But I don't know. I keep thinking about this. Like, the media is always trying to make us afraid. So this is the perfect thing to make us even more afraid. And people are afraid. People are incredibly afraid because now they're like, they can't even live their lives. So this is all you have to think about. And then you're just being told all this stuff and not really being told anything in like a positive light. Like the fact that hospitalizations are actually going down, you know, that the death numbers and the case numbers are actually kind of fudged. Like if you really look into it, the data is cumulative data. Like sometimes they'll be like, this is the case rate we've had, and they're adding cases that are backlogged from earlier. California did that. Newsom talked about how like, oh, we had a backlog of cases that we added to the case count. So it's like you can't really go off those numbers. The thing I feel like what people are getting at, you know, the people that are like data driven are getting at is like what we have to look at are the hospitalizations due to it. You have to look at the outcome, the mortality due to it, who's getting sick. You know, who's not getting sick, who's getting it and not getting sick. You know what I mean? Like all that stuff. All the stuff that really needs to be part of the public health discussion as opposed to just being like, let's listen to the experts. Let's listen to them, right? Because, you know, I got into this thing on Twitter about someone saying like, oh, Fauci saying we need to wear masks. We all need to wear masks, you know, and why doesn't anybody just listen? Why don't they all just listen to Fauci? But the thing is, Fauci said not to wear masks in the beginning, okay? And then so people did listen. And then he came out and said, all right, I was lying about that. He actually admitted. I have a clip from Jimmy Dore where he plays Fauci saying, like, yeah, the reason I said that is because of the shortage of PPE. Which is fucking, what kind of bullshit is that? Why don't you just tell people to wear cloth masks then? What, right? If masks save lives, then telling people not to wear masks, especially at the beginning of the pandemic when we didn't know anything about this and it was very severe, then lives were lost. Ergo, lives were lost by the masks not being used at the behest of Dr. Fauci, who then came out and said, I was bullshitting just because we needed them in the hospitals. Okay, well, why don't you just tell people to wear bandanas and shit and fucking wear a cloth mat like everybody is now? Why didn't you do that back then to minimize, you know, to whatever, flatten the curve or any of that stuff? Look, there's actually data out there now that says it doesn't seem to make a difference what precautions people are taking, locking down, masks, mandates. Like, it doesn't seem to really matter. It just seems like the virus does what it does. You know? I mean, that just seems to be just like every other virus. Every other virus, just like every other virus, okay? There's immunity. It spreads through the population. Certain percent of the population is less vulnerable than others. They provide immunity. The herd immunity that comes, that makes it so that it's much harder for the vulnerable to get the disease. Okay? That's what we should be doing. We shouldn't allow Dr. Fauci and immunologists to dictate public health policy because it's kind of, they're different fields. He actually doesn't seem to know anything about it because he's fucking, why would he lie? Why would he lie? Why would you do that? You know what I mean? Whether it was a mistake or not, yeah, that's fuckery. So then you can't start blaming people for not trusting who to believe or to wear masks or not. You can't, you know what I mean? The government, the bureaucrats, they failed us. You know what I mean? Like it's not like we came up with this idea. It's not like the people were like, yeah, fuck masks or whatever. It's and then it was politicized. Now it's like the Democrats are the mask people and the Republicans are the anti-mask people, and it's just so dumb. So dumb. See what happens? Public health policy getting hijacked by the state, by bureaucrats, by politicians. You know what I mean? And none of them have the actual interest of the people in mind when they make these decisions. They just want to win or hold on to their power or whatever it is. Whatever it is they're, whatever it is they want, that's what they're going for. Because you got to imagine these people are still being paid, okay? Fauci, Congress, newscasters, they're all fucking getting rich off this shit. All right, I feel like I'm just repeating another podcast I heard. In fact, let me recommend a podcast to you. This podcast that I heard, a specific episode that is about the data behind COVID, and you're like, oh shit, is this like a pandemic thing? Has Rogan become radicalized, and is he like is this pandemic? Is this like pandemic? Which also, if you think about it, that's also propaganda too. How do you know that pandemic is bullshit? You know what I mean? How do you know that? Just because they told you? Just because they said so? I'm just saying, isn't it worth it to question everything when you got somebody like Dr. Fauci lying to our faces about whether or not to wear masks? So it's episode 1750 of the Tom Woods Show. Okay, just Google it or look it up. Tom Woods, episode 1750. It's called Rational COVID Reporter versus the Lockdowners, and it's about this woman, Jennifer Cabrera, who's basically an independent journalist who has been compiling data about her local area, the city she lives in, and looking at all this data. And it's a very interesting discussion. It's a rational discussion. It's not emotional at all, and it's data driven. And I don't know. I think it's very important to hear points of view that may be contrary to the dominant conventional point of view that everybody is that you hear everywhere, right? It's good to have a little contrast to that. That isn't necessarily like conflict driven either. You know what I mean? Because so much of the media now it's all conflict. It's all about like our side, their side. There's like it's all politicized and there's sides. Okay. Tom Woods is like a libertarian guy or whatever. Am I turning libertarian? Oh my God. No, like I said, I like to listen to things from the progressive side, and I like to listen to things from the libertarian side. Okay. A little bit of left, a little bit of right, quote unquote. But I don't, you know what I mean? Those labels just don't apply anymore. I think that's one of the things we got to realize now that we're coming to this fucking crazy time, is like all the traditional structures are breaking down. These binaries, they're false. Democrat, Republican, like really you think there's two sides who are pro-war, pro-business? Okay. I mean, business, they're the party of business and the party of war. Which one? Both. Okay. And so is there a real conflict? All right. Nancy Pelosi is impeaching Donald Trump and then passes his entire legislative agenda, his fucking military budget, gives him the Space Force. It kind of makes you question the whole narrative, right? Like, they're really fighting. They're really fighting when they seem to be in cahoots. I don't know. Well, anyways, speaking of fighting and in cahoots, we got the whole stimulus talk happening, right? Like Trump, right after he got out of the hospital, was like, we're not gonna do stimulus till after the election, and then the market tanked, and then he was like, all right, fine, we might do stimulus. The market went up, and this is the market now. And of course, the main thing is everybody's like, give me stimmy, right? Like, we want that stimmy, we need it. I mean, when it comes to stimulus, the government is like pretty open with the purse strings when it comes to war, Wall Street, banks, corporations. They're just like, okay, here you go, guys. But when it comes to the people, it's like, ooh, I got $1,200 is all I got. That's it. And even with that, people were like, woohoo, they're buying boats and shit. People were doing stuff, buying guns, buying boats, buying gold, buying Bitcoin. Yeah, flood people with money. Well, they need to. I mean, things are going to fucking, people are talking about a civil war. Nobody has jobs. You don't think they're going to have to fucking flood everybody with money, or else there's going to be some real violent shit. I mean, there's already violence. You don't think it's going to get worse? If you listen to financial podcasts, or if you listen just to what people are saying, about the dollar, everybody agrees that it's going to be debased. And it's pretty obvious because we've printed more stimulus than ever, just created money out of thin air, and it's got to get paid back one day. And guess who's going to pay it? The the taxpayer, right? But with what money? The dollars we get from the government. So there's just this, you know what I mean? This is kind of like echo chamber of money going back and forth that's becoming more and more worthless. The dollar's not tied to anything. You just create more supply of it. So then logically the value of it's going to go down the more of it there is. So there's just going to be dollars everywhere. And of course, what the Fed has said is that they're going to fight inflation, right? Everybody needs to fight inflation because you start inflating the money. Apparently, part of what saving the markets or whatever was just the government, like the Fed, just buying up shitty companies, just like buying up all this all these corporate bonds. I'm talking like I know what I'm talking about. I'm just going off of stuff I've digested over this pandemic, and now I am sort of spitting out, right? But the basic thesis makes sense, right? The dollar is the supply of the dollar is going to increase a lot because they have to flood everybody with cash. That is going to debase the dollar even more, and basically now the challenge is how to debase the currency and fight inflation at the same time. And one of the things is, if you look at Japan, what they've done is put their interest rates negative, right? And so it creates sort of a stagnation, like 30 years of stagnation or something like that. So maybe that's in store for us. I don't know. But the way people are talking, everybody's talking about, well, you got to get your money out of the dollar and you can put it in stocks, right? You can put it into gold or silver, like precious metals. You can put it into crypto, like Bitcoin or Ethereum or something. You can put it into something else besides the dollar, because the dollar is going to go down. Some people are like, no, it's not going to go down. Some people are like, there's no way it's going to go down because it's the global reserve currency and everybody needs dollars. And everywhere around the world, once dollars get cheap, they're going to fucking buy up dollars, and that's going to drive the price up. So that's an alternate thesis, right? It's possible that the dollar will it'll balance out. Like, even though the dollar will go down in value in the States, like around the world, it will still retain its value. But then that also seems to be dependent on the stability of the United States, and if the United States is actually still a world empire, after all this, considering, I've said in earlier episodes, I've talked about how Russia and China are positioning themselves to take over or create new reserve currencies, ones backed by gold or something, or their own digital currencies, things like that. There's a big old explosion going on, gold and silver. There's a huge bull market, and then it pulled back, and now it's sort of, people are basically saying it's going to rally again. It's going to go up again after these pullbacks, because I guess they're just saying, and I just listen to a lot of podcasts about mining stocks and gold people. I've become such a nerd. I've always been a nerd, but now I'm learning about this stuff. And basically, everybody's in agreement that the price of gold and silver is going to go up. It's going to go up because people not only are going to put their money into it as a store of value because of currencies going down, but also because of the increase in use of silver, particularly in things like solar panels. If I can just think electronics, basically tech is here to stay. Things are going to get more and more technical, computerized, and silver is going to be a big part of that. So I don't know. This is also something my dad used to say to me all the time, so I don't know if I believe it, just because, that's the tiny sliver of a relationship that I hold on to with my dad is buying silver, which I did make a little bit of money on, so, thanks, Dad. There's also crypto explosion, man. Bitcoin. What is it? I don't know. There's no time to really get into what it is. You can look up. I read the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper. It's actually not that technical beyond gets into coding or whatever, but before that, it kind of makes sense. He's talking about sound money. What I was just talking about how the dollar is going to get debased. The whole thing about Bitcoin was to create a type of digital currency that is limited in supply, scarce, easily transportable, uncensorable, all these things that you have a problem with fiat money or gold, right? It's really hard to carry gold around and all that stuff, and that's sort of what it was supposed to fix. And now, I think it's safe to say, today there was news that Square bought $50 million in Bitcoin, with the same thesis that the similar thesis that all these people have been talking about the debasement of the U.S. dollar and using it as a store of value to protect, like a hedge against inflation. Basically, everything's inflation. Inflation is coming. Okay, that's actually good for me because I have tons of debt. Okay, so inflating is good for debt because the money becomes worthless, so then my debt is worth less. You know what I mean? Basically, I'm hoping they're going to have a debt jubilee and just give everybody all this money back, all the student loan money. That'll be great for me, but terrible fundamentally for the economy, but great for me. I would like to take all that free money and then move it into Bitcoin, gold, silver, stocks, like diversify. Like you got to have some cash, right? You got to have some gold, you got to have some Bitcoin. And what you need to do is sign up for my newsletter and pay $50 a month to, no, I'm just kidding. That'd be great. I should turn this into a financial podcast where I just start charging people for my quote unquote financial advice. Like I bet you there's so many fucking hucksters doing this shit. I bet you there's so many people who are just bullshitting and making money. I mean, it's basically just like comedy. There's tons of people who are just doing stuff, doing the way they make money in comedy is to teach other people to do comedy. And in the end, those people learn what they need to do is make more money in comedy, right? But anyways, there was big news earlier. There was a company called MicroStrategy that bought a shitload of Bitcoin, and they're actually traded on the stock exchange. I think they're the first company on the stock exchange to do it. And then Square, which is huge, owned by the guy who does Twitter, and Cash App. It's huge. So that's a huge jump in the price of Bitcoin today. And I don't know. I mean, people are asking me about it because I posted about the fucking the sale or whatever, and people are saying, should I buy Bitcoin now? Should I buy? And I think yes, the answer is yes, you should, but I don't think you should put all your money into it. I don't like to tell people, yeah, put everything you got into it, because Bitcoin is super volatile, and everything's volatile now. You know what I mean? Trump could tweet something and the whole market just tanks, and you could just lose thousands of dollars depending on how much money you put in. So what I like to do, something I learned about, it's called dollar cost averaging, where you just buy a little bit at a time. Right now I'm just buying $10 a day, just a little bit, over time until my stimmy runs out, until my stimulus money runs out. And then, whatever, I'll have some savings maybe, or I'll have to cash in all that Bitcoin. Hopefully the market won't tank and it's worth less than what I got it for. We'll see. But I think that's one of the best ways to start. It's just no different than saving money, right? Putting a little bit away every day or every month or every week or whatever. But instead of putting it into the bank where your dollars will go down in value, why not, put it into something like gold or Bitcoin or something? I don't know. Just do a little research and find out what has value and plan for the future. Jesus Christ, what is happening to me? You know what, though? I was about to say I'm turning into my dad, but my dad was actually not a long-term planner. He never talked to me about investing or strategic. I mean, he talked to me about silver, but that was more speculative. I think my dad's more of a speculator, but he's not really much of a money maker. I don't know. I mean, stability was not his forte. You know what I'm saying? But in terms of stability, it's not looking good, is it? I mean, it's just no matter who wins, quote unquote, wins the election, everybody's talking about how it's going to be contested. Both sides are talking about how they'll contest it. Everybody's already assuming there'll be some kind of contest between the two. People are saying civil war, throwing around civil war, for fun. Yay, what a fun thing to think about. Civil war. Most people who have never even thought about it are talking about it. And so that, of course, raises some alarms. And, of course, that kind of instability is actually very good for its traditional stores value like gold, possible new stores value like Bitcoin. This is not investment advice. I'm not trying to tell you to do that. I'm just trying to paint the picture of what the thinking is behind all these people, these companies, actual corporations that are putting their money into Bitcoin right now. What they're thinking, what it is. And it makes sense. We're stretched thin. We were in 7 wars. We were bailing everybody. We've bailed out people since 2008. Government's just been bailing out companies, you know what I mean? And not stopping the wars. Now we have to bail out the people. Now it's just, and so who knows? It just doesn't look good. Just when you look at it financially, just imagine you have an Xbox, you got the new Xbox, and then you decided, you know what, I'm going to buy 10 of these things because it's going to go up in value, right? Because there's only so many Xboxes you're going to make. And then the next day, after you buy those 10 Xboxes, thinking that they'll double in value, Microsoft announces they're flooding the market. They have way more Xboxes than they thought they would make, and they just start flooding the market with Xboxes. In fact, the price starts going down, right? So now you're left holding the bag, right? So that's all. It's a very simple It's a simple, just like, it's not a complicated thesis. You know what I'm saying? It's not a complicated thing. Just makes sense. Look, if you've got a stash of money, and a lot of us do because of the fucking, the unemployment and the stimulus, it's not a bad idea to put a piece of it away. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying any one place is the best place to put it, or any one stock, or buy this, or I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying it's good to think about diversifying your bonds, motherfucker. Remember Wu-Tang Financial? Remember that? Good times. All right. Anything else? I guess like one thing I'm starting to learn about is taking a look at the stability of the market. And there is an indicator called the VIX, which is a volatility index, which is pretty fun to watch, actually, when you can see, like during the pandemic, you could see it spike up, you could see it go down. That's just sort of one of those things that I like to look at. I don't know. I'm just hoping they'll give us stimmy forever, huh? Maybe it'll be stimmy forever. And then what? I don't know. Maybe we'll be like trading gems or something for goods. I don't know. I mean, who knows? We have no idea. But isn't that sort of the fun of it all? The uncertainty, the fun of it all, the fires, windows smashing. I mean, it's all fun. Fun and games. Good times. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not scaring you. I don't mean to scare anybody. But thank you so much for listening to the Rojan Kim Cast. You can find me on Apple, on Google, on Stitcher. Find me on YouTube. Go to rojankim.com. Go on to Instagram. Find me there. I'm on IGTV. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.